aerospace and defense manufacturing,
machines and automation,
additive manufacturing,
smart manufacturing,
global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief for SME Media. I'm joined today by Kathy Wengel, Executive Vice President and Chief Technical Operations and Risk Officer for Johnson & Johnson, where she has more than 3 decades of experience in leadership roles. In her current role, Kathy is responsible for the company's core technical operations and risk management capabilities. She leads key technical operation functions, including procurement, engineering and property services, sustainability, and cross-sector supply chain teams, as well as risk functions including quality and compliance, environmental health and safety, and global security and global brand protection. Outside of Johnson & Johnson, Kathy is chair of the board of directors at the National Association of Manufacturers and serves on the boards of directors for the Laboratory Corp of America and GS1. Welcome to the program, Kathy.
Steve, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and which is an understatement after reading your resume. I feel like we could devote a full podcast to any one of your jobs and experiences.
Well, it's great to be able to be with you and talk about the future of our industry. I'm looking forward to it.
So, how did you get involved in manufacturing?
Well, Steve, I joined Johnson & Johnson 36 years ago, right out of university as an engineer, and quickly began working in our manufacturing spaces from the time I was a young child. I love to build things and make things, so I think I'm a maker at heart, and then spent the majority of my career in that space in operations, supply chain, then as well as in quality. Moved to different manufacturing sites around the world for Johnson & Johnson, and now at this point in my career, both internally and externally, really advocating for the important future that our industry of manufacturing has and the important contribution it makes to economies around the world.
And you went to Princeton, if I remember right. And what was your discipline? Mechanical, chemical?
Civil engineering and operations research. So it was an interesting combination. And I'll tell you, I've done both of those things, from building some buildings and plants through the operations research aspects of how do we make our plants, our supply chains, our businesses more efficient in what we need to do. So I've been fortunate in being able to apply both of those.
Right. And starting out, what did you envision for yourself? Obviously, you've accomplished a lot. Did you have a certain career track in mind?
No, when I came in to J&J, 2 things. So one, I knew coming out of university, I wanted to be in an industry that manufactured something that was making products that I could see and feel, and in particular was attracted to J&J by our purpose, by our credo, and that we were making products, healthcare products that really matter, that really matter to people. And so it's that combination of purpose driven and that innate characteristic I had of loving to make and build things that came together. But, at that time, certainly would never have projected, number one, staying in a company this long. And it's a testament to the opportunities and the diversity of experiences I've had at J&J, but also, when you think about decades ago, it's hard as a young person to project all the twists and turns and things a career can have. So I was just really happy to go into something that inspired me. And I was also very willing to go throughout my career in a lot of white spaces. I've had 14 jobs at J&J in my 36 years, and 11 of them did not exist either in that operating company within J&J or the region or eventually the corporation. Even the role I'm in today did not exist before, I helped co-create, create that role.
That's interesting. First of all, that you stayed at the company for so long, which is starting to be a little bit unusual, although at SME, we do have quite a few people 20, 30, and even a few 40-year veterans. And throughout the manufacturing industry, I know there is a lot of long-termers. What kept it interesting for you at J&J? It's interesting that so many of your jobs were brand new for the company, which says a lot about yourself, that you're able to create new positions and new experiences within the organization.
Yes, and I think that those two link together in what has kept me motivated, excited, curious, and never bored a day within those 36 years. It's being in an industry, number one, that really impacts people and where you can see and feel the difference that you make every day, no matter what role you're in the company. That connection to patients, that's the first sentence in our credo. That is what drives and motivates all of us. So I think that's the first element. Secondly is the diversity of our different businesses. Until a year ago, we had also a consumer business that's very well known, as well as our medicines, our pharmaceutical business, and our medical technology. We spun off our consumer health business, but across the years, that diversity of lenses that you had to patients, to consumers, the fact that we are, a truly global company, and I was able to move from the U.S. To Puerto Rico, which is a major manufacturing hub. I moved there just over 30 years ago. Supposed to be a 1 to 2 year assignment. It became 7 years. I had the chance then to move to Europe for a couple of years, which became almost a decade, along with meeting the man who's now my husband, who's from Europe and speaks a different native language than myself. So all of those things contribute to a career that's not one linear career of 36 years. It's a lot of opportunity, evolution, and willingness to go to things outside the comfort zone, but go where growth and opportunity, and most importantly for me, where I knew I could really feel like I was making a difference.
On your roles, especially across the different departments and different regions of the world, as a global manufacturer, how did you set up those processes that gives the continuity across regions, across manufacturing plants, across operations, to ensure the quality, especially on the medicine side?
Yeah, that is one of the things that where I've actually really had a great set of diverse experiences from learning to do that at what I call an operating company level. Maybe that would be one of our businesses in a country, our pharmaceutical business in a country, or our consumer business in a cluster of countries. And so all the way up to then regional roles, leading quality, and the global roles. And I think, Steve, a couple things. Number one, it's understanding what is important for us to have one voice as J&J and one standard globally that applies to all of our businesses. And those are things that are highly important to patients or highly important to external stakeholders. And those are fewer of the elements, because then when you get into the difference between a pharmaceutical company and med tech company, many standardization elements are unique and important for that industry, but might not easily go across. So it's important not to force fit too many things to be what we would call enterprise-wide, but also make sure they're fit for purpose in what we call our business segments, med tech or pharmaceuticals. Or then there are things that where local requirements or regulations may be so unique that there is an additional requirement or process you need to put in place to manage something that may be, particular, very particular for a certain area. So it's about getting that process at the right level to be executed, knowing the needs of all, of all stakeholders.
You beat me to the punch on that one. I was going to ask about the different regulations across countries and how you accommodate that, as well as the different work practices among countries.
Yes. So from a regulation standpoint, one of the areas we work hard and our industry does is actually on regulatory harmonization, because it does no one any good to have too much diversity in regulations. The more we can align to common standards across big blocks of countries, that allows us to be more efficient, right? Which allows us to deliver healthcare products at a lower cost. But there are differences, and sometimes there are differences in the label that's approved for a different country. Sometimes there are just particularities of a country and how they operationalize healthcare. So we always advocate and work towards a global standard. We build our policies and procedures to that, but individual countries and because also, many of our supply chains run globally, but there are national requirements, and so we need to assure that, for example, any manufacturing plant that is supplying Japan or that is supplying Brazil, are particular requirements there, and those plants, even if they're located in another country, we need to assure they have the connection and the process to make sure they comply with those local requirements also. So it's important to have a great stack of across your policies and procedures that can connect, to what is needed and help assure, continuity.
Have you seen much progress on the harmonization front? I mean, it's been ongoing and a push for a long time.
So over the arc of my career, an absolute yes, for sure. And I'd say even particularly in the last decade, things that were tentative pilots we've seen with health authorities get better. Now, I'm talking more in particular to health authority regulations. There are many other areas, as we see, if you talk environmental regulations, if you talk the emergence of other areas in sustainability, right? There's just great disparity or even lack of global standards, but particularly with health authorities, there are now mutual recognition programs and mutual inspection programs. So instead of having 6 authorities have to come and all look at the same thing, they will accept each other's outcomes. Now that makes the stakes higher for you to make sure you're doing a good job. But those are things that really bring a lot of value. And so we try to also now apply similar, rationale when we look at other areas with emerging regulations. How do we help build standards? And that's in fact part of my the work I do on other industry associations like GS1 or the National Association of Manufacturers. Really, we're working to get more common policy standards that at least can help make it easier to consistently, right, comply and deliver.
Yeah, well, if you could tell us a little bit more about GS1 and NAM and how your role there. Obviously, you deal across manufacturing and vertical segments, and how different industries can learn from each other.
Thank you. It's a great question. In fact, that's something that's in common in both of those or organizations, is that they're indeed cross industry. For GS1, GS1 is probably the largest not-for-profit global standards organization you may have never heard of. If you look at the barcode, or what's technically known as the GTIN, on any product you buy, a consumer product, a bottle of water, a pack of gum, up through on a pack of medicines or on a medical device, across to other industries, marketplaces. That standardization of that coding system and how we create master data so that products can be better sold globally. Basically, how commerce can flow across borders by having international codification systems that then become the basis of track and trace, the ability to define the traceability of products and their precursors, to build circularity use cases. Those global standards is what the GS1 organization now for decades has done. In fact, we just celebrated the 50 years of the barcode being used. You might get a supermarket, et cetera, but 50 years of that organization and standards, and now on to, much more advanced technology today that they're leading. And so industries coming together to align on those voluntary standards, very important. For the National Association of Manufacturers, this is a U.S. Industry association. It's one of, if not the largest industry association in the United States. We represent nearly 14,000 different manufacturers, from big multinationals like J&J down to the small mom and pop manufacturer that you would have in your local community. And what is really important there is that for our government at state and national levels, that there's a good understanding of, number one, the contribution of manufacturing to society, but number two, the needs and the importance of making regulation simple, practical, the ability to advocate for skill development. There are more than 500,000 open manufacturing jobs, Steve, in the U.S. Right now. And over the next decade, we expect more than 3.8 million new jobs will be needed, and we could have 1 to 2 million of those unfilled if we are not inspiring more people through great things like what you're doing, right, to pursue modern manufacturing careers. So those are the things that are important to me, and important to our industry for the future.
Obviously, workforce development and the worker shortage are huge issues that SME is involved with as well. What are some of the success stories and ways that companies can really work to overcome those issues?
Well, there are many different paths for companies to take to address workforce and workforce development issues, depending on the scale of your company. But no matter what that is, number one, it's the relationships and building out the talent pools in the communities that are important to you. That's relationships with community colleges, in addition to universities, with high schools. It is the relationship to support your supply base, increasing in the areas that you need. In things like the NAM, the Manufacturing Institute is the workforce development nonprofit arm of the NAM, and we work to really build out broader talent pools across the U.S. in partnership with companies. So several areas are, we call Women Make America, Veterans Make America. So traditional talent pools have under-indexed in female in our industry and manufacturing. And while there's progress that's been made, we are still in the 20+%, high 20s in participation of females in the manufacturing industry. If we can get that, Steve, just up to 35% by 2030, we will close that entire, job gap, right? We'll be able to fill all of those jobs just by doing a better job of attracting women. Same thing with veterans, that transition from military into civilian life and industry sometimes is not as simple or straightforward as you would hope. And so being able to work through industry associations or other groups where each company can come and bring their roles that they're looking to fill, bring their commitment to how they do workforce development. Those are things we can do together. And then each company, may work on the things that are the priorities for them. But without a doubt, I think every company is accountable not only to find the person, that particular talent the minute you need them, but to invest in building out talent pools that you can tap into over time.
Obviously, I'm sure you've seen a lot of change during your career from a technology standpoint, global events, and the workforce. What was it like when you first started out? There has been some progress as far as women joining manufacturing, but still not where it should be, as you noted. And are there particular things that you've been involved with in terms of mentorship, and what types of policies and strategies does Johnson & Johnson have?
Sure. So certainly from my career, I've seen outstanding progression, and each country, each locale is at a different place in that journey of a more diverse workforce. When I came into Johnson & Johnson, and the time I became a plant manager, we still had, I'd say, probably fewer than 10% of our plant managers were female. Now that number is north of 40%. So over a couple decades, the focus on, understanding how diverse leaders can really bring different skills to those roles as a plant manager or an engineering supervisor. I think we've all come a long way as a company, as an industry. There are also many parts of the world that are nowhere near there. I'm super proud. Our company is in fact about 15, if not more, points ahead of the market average for that. But that's taken a lot of focus and building that pipelining, as I mentioned, and things through the years. So I'm now our executive sponsor of our Women's Leadership and Inclusion ERG at the company. We'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. So you can see how we've been working that across the whole company. But I'm super proud, for example, the entire executive committee of Johnson & Johnson that I am now a part of is 50-50, 50-50 male female, and things like mentorship, like sponsorship, like ERGs. Those are very important. We'll also have the 10th anniversary next year of the other program I sponsor, which is our women, we call it We STEM 2D, Women in STEM D. So not only science, technology, engineering, math, but we added an extra M, that's the 2, for manufacturing, and a D for design, because as you will know, design thinking is so important in folks coming into those technical fields. So those are just some examples. In that case of We STEM 2D, we work reach millions of youth around the world. So we start at an early age with partners, Junior Achievement, Girl Scouts, Smithsonian Institute, and all the way up through university partnerships, and then professional level sponsorship, mentoring, etc.
To add another D, digital. One of your initiatives is digital first, and from a tech standpoint, Johnson & Johnson's history dates back nearly 140 years. How does such a large and legacy organization continue to innovate, implement digital strategies, and adopt Industry 4.0 technologies?
Well, the value number one of the learning that comes from 140 years is that learning of how to not only have multiple generations in the workplace at the same time, but to realize that there is a constant industrial and technical revolution happening. I mean, we today may be talking about Industry 4.0, right, or the fourth 4IR, fourth industrial revolution. But the reality is, technology is always advancing. And so having a relentless dissatisfaction with the status quo is important. Recognizing, though, there are, within that continuous change, there are step change moments. And we believe strongly that the world is in one now where we have been a science-based company for 140 years, and we are now a science and technology-based company, because the intersection of what technology can now do to accelerate science is extraordinary. The ability to not only dream of cures now for certain diseases, but really see them within grasp within years is an extraordinary thing. I think there's no future of manufacturing anywhere that doesn't involve AI for the future. And so it's a matter of, in all of these cases, putting in the right guardrails when you're piloting new technology, particularly in healthcare. You cannot take the risk of unknown consequences. You have to have very known consequences, but making sure that we become digital first, that, as you mentioned, that we are not a digitally native company. You can't be, being born 140 years ago, but being digitally first thinkers and making sure we build the digital thread throughout our supply chain that allows us to trace product from origin out through its use in patients, and then ultimately to outcomes that allow us to differentiate the performance of our products. Those are no longer just dream aspirations. They are reality. Now, they also come with new risks, all the digital space. And the other half of my team we haven't talked about is really on the risk functions that help support so our quality organization, our security, our brand protection, healthcare compliance, how we make sure that we are doing things in a way that are the right way to do them and not creating undue risk for the company or risk for patients.
Well, I'd talk a little bit more about risk, but first, any initial applications of AI that you've used successfully, and where do you see it going eventually from a company standpoint, both on the consumer side, pharmaceutical benefits, as well as on the manufacturing front?
Yeah. So again, we're now with our pharmaceutical and our med tech business, our consumer business, right, is now its own standalone company. But for us, to your point about patient insights, is a key area of opportunity. But when we, as well as in R&D and in supply chain, so we have set up particular, but both AI governance, AI governance process that and our own internal sandbox that allows us to, in a controlled way, build out use cases. We have several hundred use cases being built out that way across Johnson & Johnson right now. Some examples, one we've done recently in inventory in one of our most complex med tech businesses where there are a lot of SKUs, and we were previously using some advanced planning software to try to do inventory optimization, but the output was very complicated. It was hard for the planners to understand. It was even harder for them to explain to the business leaders. And so we've been able to develop a generative AI, let's call it a chatbot, that actually does that data and actually comes with recommendations and things and summaries that are understandable and actionable by business leaders, which is sounds like a simple thing, but it's really breakthrough because it does that analytic work also in minutes, right? Not in days or weeks. And other areas, the other I mentioned is also in the regulated, functions. We talked earlier about all of the massive regulations around the world. We're actually developing generative AI process to take all those regulations along with our policies and procedures. And when a regulation changes, the ability to identify for us where we may need to change. Those are just a couple examples in the supply chain operations space.
Kathy, what are some of you mentioned risk as part of your job. What are some of the big challenges right now that the industry is facing?
Stephen, in the risk area, I think, greater resilience is the best way I can characterize what supply chain and manufacturers focus on now in terms of risks coming out of the pandemic, supply disruptions and whiplashes that on things that were never issues, geopolitical risks, which really for our generation have not been a material issue until today, the impact of natural disasters, you look at all those things. And so creating better resilience, the ability to have choices, which is about choices when you need them, the cyber security risks in terms of supply chain. So those are some of the key areas, but improving resilience and therefore defining risks that negatively impact your resilience, and really having good operational plans to mitigate those, or at least to be prepared for those, are some of the important areas.
So we're recording this in late October, a few weeks after Manufacturing Day. Did you have any big initiatives that you worked on there?
Oh, man, Manufacturing Day is always a special day, and in some of our sites around the world, we have the opportunity to open our doors, certainly to family members at times, or at times to community or other visitors or other stakeholder visitors, suppliers. It's a time for us also to really reinforce the extraordinary careers that occur in manufacturing. This is not the old days of the smokestack, right? And people coming home from work, exhausted and dirty from working in a plant. This is a modern world of exciting careers doing really important work for patients, or in other industries, for customers. So it's a chance to really celebrate the amazing workforce there and attract new folks into our workforce.
Great. Well, thanks again, Kathy, for joining us today and taking time. Very interesting and insightful. A lot of great information. And to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and hear more of our podcast, visit advancedmanufacturing.org.